Hello, everyone. Timothy Mitchell here, and I have a story for you. And it's about printing on textile, soft fabric in particular, on a 365. But a lot of what I'm going to tell you applies to the 700 and 800 series. So now that we've cleared that little hurdle on top, I'll make that go away. Bear with me. It's a bit long, but it has a lot of information in it, and I think it'll be of help to you. This video stems from a customer that came to me with some media that is HP certified media and said, we are having trouble with this. And I took a look at it, both on a 365, which is what they have, as well as on a 700, which also they have. And out of the box, things were not quite working as advertised. Now, the media is certified for the 365, but it is not certified for the 700. When I finished, I believe I can get it to work fine on both printers, but with some caveats, and settings have to be very specific. What this is a product called EnduraFab. EnduraFab was one of the first durable textiles on the market. Now, I would expect to see some of this in some other textiles as well, so I don't think it's unique to EnduraFab. What EnduraFab is, and this is the EnduraFab Premier, but I also ran some EnduraFab Stretch. There's another one called a frontlit, and they all had very similar characteristics across multiple rolls. Now, when I got the roll in, the first thing I do when I look at fabric on a roll is, did this thing get tossed around? There's two really important things about printing the fabric because we're printing direct with the latex. First, is everything on the roll properly? Because if it's not, I might reconsider even accepting it. Preparing it for shipping and arriving to me, and also having it converted onto the core so it's printable and even, is really important with direct printing, for fabric. If you don't take that into consideration, you're going to pay for it. If the roll has been damaged or dinged or dented, you might have what's called a weak side. You also might have dings in it where you have dents that travel through it, and it makes it very difficult to direct print. For example, our stitch line, which is our die sub, you can just print to paper and then transfer it and let the transfer press handle all the heavy lifting with fabric that's a little irregular. Not with direct print. You're printing right on the fabric. The fabric has to run in just like a banner or canvas or vinyl or anything else, except it's not like those things. It's fabric, right? It's elastic. It can be stretchy. It can be stretchy in one direction. It can have raw edges. There's all sorts of things with fabric that simply make it a different approach to printing. What I did in this case is I loaded this particular product, the Frontlit Premier, onto the 365, downloaded the preset, which is certified, put it on there, and saw, this isn't quite working right. Now, there's several things I did along this process to correct for that allow me to be where I am now. The first is always make sure that your core that you're going to is long enough so that you're not riding up on the edges. You don't want to ride up on the edges. So you want to make sure you have a little play. Even though they try to put fabric on evenly, it will always travel a little bit. You don't want much. I mean, you want it to be nice and straight to the take-up. The second thing I notice is it didn't seem to be having enough weight on the dancer bar so that it would travel with enough pull on it. See, with fabric, you don't have push, okay? There's not much value in push. A lot of times when you go forward, if it's not on the take-up roll and you go push, you go forward, nothing much happens. It just folds on itself. The fabric has to be able to have something that pulls it a little bit. On the 700 series, when you load fabric, it will automatically set the take-up reel, the new take-up system, which does not have a dancer bar, to continuous tension. So when you feed it onto the take-up and it beeps, it's going to hold continuous tension on the fabric because you need that. You can't let no tension come down on the bottom, because unless it's heavily coated, the fabric isn't going to work very well. These are counterweights, or if you will, cantilevers. They did not come originally on the 360, and then in the course of the life of the 360, they added these, and in the 365, they come default. This can slide front or back. If you're running adhesive vinyl and you have to do very tight panel matching, you bring them all the way out to the back, which means this counterweight goes against the dancer bar. Now the dancer bar has the lightest possible touch, right? So this is about the worst possible position you could have for fabric. Now, in my case, I had them on here and they were forward, but my reasoning is I still probably have a little bit of weight on the back end, and I want no weight on the back end. I want it like it used to be before these were developed, because I'm printing fabric, and to have a nice even, see, when you look at it, either straight, and I usually put the tray down. That's just I think my angle is a little better here, but I have counterweight. That dancer, or excuse me, not counterweight, I have dancer bar on here. It's pulling a little bit. The weight of that dancer bar is being applied. And as a result, I end up with this very nice, perfectly smooth print. It's not sagging in either direction, and everything is traveling to the bottom. That happens because the dancer bar has got the right amount of weight across it to print on fabric. Again, not like vinyl, not like banner, not like canvas. So I got rid of those. That was step one. That did help. It made a difference. Step two, I had the output platen protectors on. Now, the output platen protector for this printer, they're two pieces. The 700 and 800 is one piece. And you see it has felt up at the top. The purpose of that felt is if you're running really long runs of fabric, the condensation can build up more here than probably in the 700, which has a full extraction device, which is moving the condensation out of that print zone. With here, the fans are trying to bring it out, but you can build up condensation. If enough builds up, it'll kind of drip and it hits the felt and doesn't go anywhere. The trouble with these, and why I got rid of them, is the fabric, or this particular fabric, and fabrics are different. There's so many different weaves, types, coatings. They don't all run the same, but this one was tending to stick on the fabric like very, very light Velcro. So instead of gliding across the aluminum, which it will do very nicely, it was resisting against the felt. And the resistance from the felt was interfering with its printability, period. It simply would not travel smoothly because this seemed to be getting in the way. I took them off. Okay, second modification. Now, we would normally tell you to use these. I'm telling you that on some fabrics, you may have to get rid of them. They're simply going to get in the way of that gliding, and then you end up with this unevenness or tunneling or other things going on. You have to have a perfectly flat image to print to. Which brings me to the third modification. I did not use the ink collectors here. Now, this particular fabric is woven tight enough that really no ink is getting through. Do not use the ink collectors if you don't need them. Now, some materials, it's patently obvious. If you try to print through them, so much ink is going to go through, you're going to make a mess of the printer. A tiny little bit of ink is really not that big a deal. I just go out there with isopropyl alcohol and wipe it down when I'm done. It just depends how much volume you're running. This fabric is woven tight enough that I really don't see an issue with this particular fabric not being, having it go through. So for me, a flat platen is always preferable to the ink collector platen. It will lay flat. Plus, it gives me a little more advantage with vacuum. What I ended up doing was running at 20 pass with a high ink signature, with the counterweights off, with the output platen protectors gone so it could travel smoothly. And then I started adjusting vacuum. I was still getting a little ripple in some places on a longer run, and just enough ripple that the carriage would come by and touch it. Same with the 700. Now, with the 700, I also adjusted the Input tension. Input tension going up definitely benefited the 700, made a big difference. I also played around with the input tension here. It did not seem to have as much impact, but I am running more input tension than default. I'm increasing that input tension because I'm trying to smooth out where the pinch rollers release the material so everything lays nice and flat. I also used a little more vacuum. Now with vacuum, you can adjust on the fly. And what I usually do is, while it's printing, I overshoot. And I can see the vacuum, you can hear it too, and you can see it create little ripples. What you want to do is you want to keep then releasing vacuum lower and lower until you have just the bare amount of ripple, but if there's any possible little tunnels, you have it held down. You've reached the point of maximum vacuum effectiveness without overdoing it and creating the possibility of any degree of vertical banding because you have little hills and valleys on the material which are being held down on the platen. If I can avoid having vacuum, if I run normally, I run vacuum at 5 on fabric, which is effectively none. Your take-up system and your dancer bar is what's bringing it forward. Make sure that's nice and even, and when you put it on, nice and even. And then I got rid of those output platen protectors, and that seemed to do it. So currently, I am sending job after job. I'm at 40 vacuum for this media. The next roll, I might have to adjust it a little different, but usually they'll be the same. Cantilevers off, output platen protectors off. Now, if this builds up a lot of condensation, what I may have to do is, and I'm hoping to be able to do this, like I print a roll and then I deal with it, is I'm going to have some buildup in here. And I don't want that buildup to stay there, both for the integrity of that area where I'm running a high ink signature, so it's evaporating a lot of water, and that's going to collect in there. I don't have an extraction unit like you have in the 700, 800, even the 500 series where we're moving air through there to remove that excess condensation and place it in, the little container at the end of the printer. On this, what I would probably do is create, I've seen them, people take almost like a long ruler and then kind of wrap it in some absorbent fabric and then kind of put it up underneath there and try to gather as much of that condensation as possible so that can't build up, and then put the next roll on and run it. You may have to do it depending on how much while halfway through the roll, because I don't have the felt anymore to gather that, but at the same time I don't have that felt anymore getting in the way of it traveling cleanly. And if you can't travel cleanly, I can't print. And if I can't print, none of that does any good. So that is my solution. I wanted to share it with you because I have a lot, as the wonderful Hank Hill would say, I have some hours in this, I tell you what. I want to make sure you understand what I did and why I did it. Because where I'm printing right here, and where I started printing before I took the counterweights off, took the platen covers off, made sure it was even on the bottom, and then eventually got the vacuum and everything else, running a flat platen, no ink collectors, it's a big difference, So at this point, I think I'm successful with the travel of the media, the way it goes through the printer. Again, make sure you check your medias for the integrity. These, on the whole, have been quite good. You may have to adjust the vacuum a little bit as you're printing. I keep it kind of right at the point where it's effective, but no more. If you don't need it, don't use the vacuum. The tension and the dancer bar are the thing that allows it to be nice and even. Some people prefer to lift this up and have it drop. I prefer to have the angle. I think it comes off the printer a little better and then still drops down. They both seem to work. Much of what I said applies to the 700 and 800 too. Same idea. If I can avoid using the ink collectors, I do. I would think without the platen protectors are going to travel more smoothly. If the material will allow you to travel across that felt with no problems, then great. If not, you're going to have to remove them because not all fabrics may travel across that well. I ran no output platen protectors on the 700. I also used a flat platen. I used a continuous tension on the take-up reel, and then input tension was set higher And at that point, what I'm doing is I'm adjusting vacuum for each individual fabric and potentially a little bit with each roll to ensure that I have, if any ripples do show up, I'm going to be able to hold that down. And usually if there's a ripple, it will show up, in one little part is where it's that tendency, and you just have to hold it just enough so the carriage can go by and hold everything in place. Some of my strategies for printing on fabric. Some of my strategies printing on fabric after a long investment. Always, I want to make sure other people get the value of this time and investment, because you don't necessarily have the time and materials and the experience with textile that I've had a chance to run. And I want to thank you very much for your time. This is Timothy Mitchell signing out with my fabric project.